Hi everybody, my name is Vasily Kutlis. However, when I was at Northholm, my first name was translated to Bill. So all my friends know me as Bill, all my teachers know me as Bill, but my name is Vasily, it's a Greek name. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to all the teachers, and in particular Mrs. Plus, who we knew as Miss Emery when we were at school, or as we affectionately used to call her, Miss M. Nate, thank you also. And so, hang on, I've got to turn my little slide projector thing on. Okay. Did that come on? Okay. That is my Year 7 photo. That's all of us in 1985. That's me with the red circle. And now today's speech that I'm going to give you, I'm going to dedicate this speech to a couple of people, a couple of friends of mine that were in our year who have since passed away. Martin Burling, the guy in the yellow, so the yellow circle there, Martin was the very first friend I made that first day in Year 7 in 1985. Marty and I were friends right up until he passed away in March of this year from multiple serious illnesses. Marty was an absolute larrikin. He absolutely loved life, and he taught me what it meant to have friends here at Northholm, because that friendship lasted since then, 40 years later. I last saw Marty up in Queensland last August, and he still had a great positive attitude, even though he knew he was very sick. And I learnt a lot from that. And this is what this is about. Being here is about learning, not just from your teachers, but from each other. That will help you later on in life. That's my view on it. Now, Marty, a funny story about Marty. When the time came for us to be able to drive to school, when we got our Ps, the school had a rule that you were only allowed to register 2 cars to be able to drive to school, so that the school could keep track of which car was coming in and out. Marty's parents, his father, owned a Toyota dealership, both new cars and used cars. I think to this day, Marty probably holds the record for the most amount of cars driven to school, which was roughly 26 cars, if we remember correctly, because he got his Ps in the beginning of year 11, because he was older than most of us, and for 2 years he did that. Now the next slide. Okay, so the next slide, I want to dedicate this to Katrina Little. Katrina Little was in my year, so you have a Katrina Little Award. That's me again in the red circle. That's my Year 12 photo now. And that's Marty in the yellow circle, and in the orange circle in the middle, that's Katrina's photo there. Katrina was an absolutely lovely person. She was such a positive, outgoing, happy person that just wanted to see everyone do well and be well. And the award that the school gives out each year is extremely fitting. It really is. And whoever receives that award should be very proud. Now, as mentioned, I was here between 1985 and 1990. In my career, what did I do since Northholm? I'll just do very briefly. I became a designer and an art director in advertising. So when I left school, I got into university at Western Sydney. I studied a Bachelor of Design, and in our first year, I did graphic design, I did illustration, photography, exhibition design, and industrial design. I majored in industrial design, which is designing products and packaging. From that, I then worked with architects, doing little models, making little models. From there, I went into as a packaging designer, so I was a packaging designer for a while. Then I did graphic design for a little bit. Then I got into advertising. I studied art direction and copywriting, and I worked in advertising agencies for a little bit. Then I started my own businesses. So I had a design and production business. I also worked for a large company that had the Hamilton Island and Robert Oatley Vineyards. I was their creative and production manager. I went to Greece. I designed and built a house in Greece and came back. And then I also, just prior to COVID, I had my own business doing advertising for pubs and hospitality venues. I was doing all their social media, photography and videos, etc. So that's my career in a very, very small nutshell. So, what do I remember about school? The stables was where we used to have our assemblies. Now, the stables was this old building, you probably saw it in the photos, was this old actual stables where horses used to be kept, which was converted to a hall for us to be in. Now, back then, there was only half the size of the school. It was only 300 people. When it rained, we couldn't hear anyone talking because it was that loud. And the water, when it rained, would flow between our feet and run the other side of the building. Many times, it did get cancelled. I'm sure you'd love that. So many times when it did rain, the assembly would get cancelled. Some other memories. The Year 12 common room, that is the same as what it was when I was here. And I'm sure there's many stories in that common room. The canteen, so the canteen's still the same, and my mother used to volunteer to help at that canteen. The library, that's the same, but less books. My activities, so when I was at school, these were some of my activities that I did. I was the senior indoor cricket team captain. I coached the junior team. I was elected representative to the Student Representative Council. Now, guys, the no ties thing during summer, okay, I don't know, back then, if you wore shorts, you could take your tie off to go around the school with a no tie, but you had to put it on when you go back onto the bus to leave. Now, when I was elected to the Student Representative Council, I proposed that idea to the teachers back then. It was approved from that point onwards. So that was in 1987. What else? I also did leadership and peer support training. I learned how to play drums, so I was a drummer. In room 11, so that last little demountable down the bottom there, that was a place where we had tutoring for music. The other side to that was where we picked up our uniforms. Now, we used to also play at lunchtime concerts. So my brother and myself with another band as well, we used to play at these lunchtime concerts. And I would bring my own drum kit to school and set it up in the old stables. I used to also organise those lunchtime concerts as well, so I was a bit of a promoter trying to get people involved with that and setting up bands. And there's some of my memories of this school. I'm sure there's more. Now, I've got a question for you all. Who absolutely, this is the point to this whole story, who absolutely here loves school? Hands up. Okay, good. Now, the rest of you, thank you for being honest. Because guess what? I didn't really like it much either. However, I had to make it work, okay? And at the time you're doing school, a lot of stuff probably doesn't make sense, but in future it will. Trust me on that one. Now, on to academic stuff. What I want you guys to understand is that this is all about creating your own dreams. Have a dream. Have a vision for yourself. That is how you're going to get through this. Now, no, you don't have to know what you want to do after you leave school, but guide yourself into a direction that will lead you to something, because that's what's going to inspire you and motivate you to read and study, because there's a lot of pressure from everywhere. Parents, other students, teachers. So you have to create something in your own mind that's going to get you through. For me, it was architecture. I wanted to become an architect. That was my passion. Unfortunately, I wasn't studying hard enough to be able to get into architecture, and I got into the other design course instead. Now, you're going to come up against a lot of obstacles. Now, that is my report card for art. Art was my favourite subject. It became my favourite subject, but it wasn't my strength. Craft was my strength in years 7 and 8. So I used to love making things with my hands, and I had teachers that would support me. Art was not really my thing because I didn't see myself as a painter or any sort of artist. Now, let me read that to you. That was my report card for December 1988. It says it down the bottom there. Bill, now my art teacher, Mrs. McLean, this was in year 10 for the end of year. Bill works well in this subject. He is attentive to his work, reasonably creative, don't forget I became a designer, and generally understands the theory of art, generally. He is a pleasure to have in the class. Now, after reading that 40 years later, that kind of says to me that's a really nice way of saying I wasn't that good at art. Now, next slide. They're my art teachers. On the left, Mrs. Patterson, who to this day I absolutely still love and adore. She was such a lovely teacher to me. She supported me, she guided me, I still have all the work I did from way back in year 7. Mrs. McLean, also a lovely person. Mrs. McLean was different though. Mrs. McLean was the art teacher, and Mrs. Patterson was my craft teacher, who also became my art teacher. So, Mrs. Patterson on the left, that's the reason why I brought up this painting. Next slide. Okay, before we go to that. Yep, that's it. Okay, before I talk about the painting. In year 11, so I started doing art in year 11, and I had Mrs. Patterson, okay? I connected more so with Mrs. Patterson. So I was lucky enough to have her in year 11. And for the first project was, she came up with this competition for both year 11 and year 12. And the competition was paint a household object. So we had to find a household object and paint it. That's what I came up with. I went and I turned up to school. I walked into the class. I put it on a table there, and she looked at it. She didn't know who made it, by the way. She didn't see me walk in. And I put it on the table, and I'll never forget her reaction. She goes, "Oh, wow, that is amazing." And anyway, to make the long story short, I won that competition. Now, next slide. This is my very first painting I did for my first major work in art. Now, there's a story behind this, like everything. I told Mrs. Patterson that I could not paint. When she said to me, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Right, I don't know." And she says, "Right, you're going to paint." And I said to her, "I can't paint." But what Mrs. Patterson did know was what I was passionate about. And this is where you guys have to be very clear on what you're passionate about to give your teachers some guidance so that then they can guide you back. My passion was architecture. So what she said to me was, "Go take photos of buildings you like." So I did. This particular photo is of a building in Greece. And so I started painting this painting. So I had the photo, I painted it, she showed me how to do it, and off I went. Now she saw that I was extremely careful, very, very protective, that I don't, no one comes near it and that I don't mess it up. And she says to me, and this has stuck with me ever since, she goes, "Bill, if you spill coffee on your painting accidentally, use the coffee stain as part of your painting." And I think that's a great philosophy for overcoming adversity. Now, also, I was privileged to be able to have, during my year 12 year this is, so I'll show you some of the other photos. So now this was the first project that I did. That was the second major work that I did, some buildings in the city. That was the third one that I did. Now, this is in year 12. So now this was my 3-unit major work art. That's about 2.5 metres wide by about 1.5 metres tall. So it's a big painting. So I couldn't take these paintings home. The other paintings I could take home and do them at home. So what did the teachers do? They trusted me with the keys to the art room, and I came here on the weekends by myself and painted for 10 hours a day for about 12 weeks. That's how passionate I was about painting after telling them I couldn't paint. Now, That's me in year 12. Those photos there, they were taken where the staff room is now. That's my 2-unit art, okay? So, what I'm trying to get you to understand is that even if you think you can't do it, just believe in yourself, because from saying to the teachers that I couldn't paint to that in like only a year or two, that taught me a lot about myself, and that's what this is about too. You have to learn about yourself here. Good place to learn too. Now, also, my art theory was lacking. I didn't know how to write essays. Thankfully, I had Gordon Doyle, who was a past teacher, and I still keep in contact with him, and he was my English teacher. He taught me how to write essays. So, although my practical was really good, my theory was dragging me down. So my focus was to lift my theory capabilities with essay writing, and Gordon Doyle helped me do that, and I'm forever thankful for him. Your teachers will also understand you and help you as well. By the middle of year 12, I had given up on doing architecture because my marks weren't good. And so I had a teacher called Mr. Layton, who thankfully guided me into the course that I did, and I ended up, studying industrial design. Now, this is going to be an interesting story. Mathematics, December 1988. You'll see the date down there. Let me read that to you. This is from my maths teacher in 1988 when I was in year 10. She goes, "Bill has been working very hard since the changeover of classes, but I feel it has been in vain. He finds the concepts involved difficult to understand. There is just not the time available in the course which Bill would need to achieve reasonable marks. I am concerned that he will not be able to keep up with the class next year and that his other studies will suffer because of the time he needs to devote to mathematics." That was 2-unit maths. Now, by year 10, I realised I should have studied harder, but it was probably too late to get into architecture. So, I pleaded for months before year 10 finished. I pleaded with the principal, with the vice principal, with all my maths teachers. My parents got involved, the head of maths, everyone. I begged them to let me do 2-unit maths in in year 11. They wanted me to do 2-unit general, which was the lowest class. No, it wasn't going to happen. So what did I do? On the first day of year 11, I go to the 2-unit class and sit right in the middle of the class. Took my books out, sat down, and just waited. Okay? All the other students came in, and the teacher came in, Mrs. Barber, and she walked straight back outside, came back with the head of maths, and the head of maths says to me, she points at me, and she goes, "Pack all your stuff, come outside." And she was not very happy with me that I went to this class. However, after a lot of conversation with her, I convinced her to let me stay because I said to her, there's an exam coming up in 2 weeks. Now, here's the reason why my teachers, they had every right, they were correct in what they told me, okay? Here's the reason why. In year 10, yes, they're all in percentages, by the way, I got 25% for my end of year exam for maths, okay? I got 15% as an assessed mark. That's why they wouldn't let me do 2-unit maths. So I said to my teachers, I said to the head of maths, just give me one chance. This exam coming up in 2 weeks' time. If I fail it, I will happily go to 2-unit general. But it took a lot of convincing. But I was determined to do 2-unit maths. And that's what you have to be. You have to be determined to succeed, okay? But you can only be determined to succeed when you find that dream, when you find that vision. So, I studied very, very hard. My teachers got me a tutor. I had a tutor, maths tutor, after school about 3 days a week. Day and night, that's all I did, maths and nothing but maths, okay? I sat for that exam. There was probably about 40 to 50 students in 2-unit maths back then. We get the results back. I still remember the subject, arithmetic and geometric progression. And we get the results back, and I get 94%. Okay? The person who came second got kind of 20% below me. That's the person who came second. So, the point to that, what's the point to that? The point to that is believe in yourself. Even though, because your teachers have every right to believe you are not capable of something, if that is what you have shown, like what I did, okay? And, sometimes you just got to push through that, okay? Now, from that, I got that. I continued with my studies, and again, I entered an Australian maths competition that the school held, and I get a certificate of distinction in Year 11 for maths. So from getting 15% in an assessed mark and 25% for an exam mark to that. So you are capable of doing better or doing your best. You just have to find that goal and that vision to be able to achieve that, okay? And that is completely up to you. You're going to find your own thing in your own way, and all your teachers are here to help you achieve that. So guys, make the most of your time here because it goes very quickly, and in 10, 20, 30 years' time, like what I am here, you'll think, yeah, that was a pretty good experience. So, lastly, guys, like I said to you, have dreams, and there's a philosophy that I stick to sometimes as well, especially when it comes to schooling. The quality of your life will be determined by the quality of your questions. So don't be afraid to ask questions to all your teachers and learn about yourselves and learn about what motivates you and just go for it. Thank you.